The Legend of Sablewood, Willow's End, a quaint town, nestled against Sablewood Forest, a place of dark tales whispered around flickering fireplaces. They spoke of Sablewood stealing voices, trapping souls. The legend said each lost soul echoed through the trees, calling out their own names for eternity. The townsfolk warned of the woods, their eyes wide with fear. Never step foot in Sablewood, they'd say. Never speak your name aloud within its shadows, for the forest was a predator and a name was its prey. Whispers on the wind. Despite the chilling tales, the teenagers of Willow's End remained skeptical. They scoffed at the warnings, their youthful arrogance blinding them to the very real danger lurking just beyond their doorsteps. To them, the legend was nothing more than a ghost story, meant to frighten children and keep them out of the woods at night. But Sablewood held a dark allure, a siren song for the reckless and the brave. One crisp autumn evening, a group of friends dared to venture past the tree line, their laughter echoing in the stillness. They were determined to prove the legend wrong. They were determined to conquer their fear. A pact of defiance. The group consisted of 4 friends: Lucas, Emily, Daniel and Chloe. Lucas, the bold and reckless leader, urged them onward. Emily, ever cautious, voiced her concerns, but her protests were drowned out by the others' excitement. Daniel, eager to impress, followed closely behind Lucas, while Chloe, usually the life of the party, found herself unusually quiet. They made a pact to stick together, their voices loud and strong against the encroaching darkness. As they walked, the air grew heavy, the silence broken only by the sound of their own footsteps on the forest floor. They didn't know it then, but they were walking deeper into the belly of the beast, and the beast was listening. The forest's uneasy silence. Deeper they went, the sunlight fading behind the dense canopy of leaves. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, broken only by the rustle of leaves beneath their feet. The trees grew closer, their branches twisting and gnarled like skeletal fingers reaching out to grasp them. The air, once filled with the sounds of the forest, grew eerily quiet. Even the birds seemed to avoid this cursed place. An unsettling feeling settled over the group. The forest held its breath, watching, waiting. A twig snapped, then silence. Lucas, ever the fearless leader, stopped. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the stillness. His words hung in the air for a moment, then were snatched away by the wind. Then, faint as a breath on the wind, he heard it. His name, Lucas. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, slithering through the trees on the back of the wind. His blood ran cold. It was a whisper that sent shivers down his spine. A whisper that sounded all too familiar, yet twisted and distorted by some unseen force. Panic flickered across Lucas's face. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He looked at his friends, their faces pale in the fading light. Before he could utter a word of warning, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. "Emily!" Daniel cried out, his voice thick with terror. Emily stood frozen, her eyes wide with a primal fear as she heard her own name echoing through the trees, distorted and cruel. The name seemed to wrap around her like a shroud, cold and suffocating. Lost in the echoing woods. One by one, the forest claimed their voices. Daniel, his bravado gone, was the next to disappear. They heard his panicked cries, his desperate pleas for help echoing through the trees, his voice growing fainter and fainter until only the whisper of his name remained. Chloe, tears streaming down her face, clung to Lucas's arm. She was all that remained of their group, her eyes wide with terror as she listened to the forest whisper their names over and over again. The forest was a labyrinth and they were lost within its depths. The forest claims its own. The last thing Chloe saw was Lucas's face, contorted in a silent scream before he too was swallowed by the shadows. She was alone, surrounded by the whispers of the damned. The forest closed in around her, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. She ran, her breath catching in her throat, her heart pounding against her ribs. But the forest was relentless. She stumbled and fell, her hands scraping against the rough bark of a tree. The whispers surrounded her, taunting her, mocking her fear. The search party's fate. The next morning, a search party ventured into Sablewood, their faces grim, their hearts heavy with a dread they couldn't quite place. They followed the trail of broken branches and trampled leaves, their voices hushed as they called out the names of the missing teenagers. But the forest remained silent, the only sound the whisper of the wind through the trees. The search party returned to Willow's End empty-handed, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resignation. Forever lost in Sablewood. The legend of Sablewood lived on, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the safety of the town. And in the stillness of the night, if one listened closely, they could hear the whispers of the lost souls echoing through the trees, calling out their own names for all eternity. Forever lost in the whispering woods, the forest had claimed them, just as it had claimed countless others before them. Their laughter, their dreams, their fears, all swallowed by the insatiable hunger of Sablewood. Their names joined the chorus of whispers, a haunting reminder of the forest's dark power.